Suresh Babu. Now we'll quickly move to our last presentation of the day. For this we have two foreign guests from the World Resources Institute, Washington DC. We have Ms. Tien Shiao. She's an alumnus of Yale, Northwestern University and University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. And before this she worked at Bethel Memorial Institute and was also a fellow at the Yale Entrepreneurial Institute. And Mr. Charles Iceland, he's a graduate of Yale and Columbia Universities and a CFA. Together they have developed a tool called Aqueduct, about which they'll be presenting now. It's an online water risk mapping tool which helps public and private sector decision makers assess and respond to water risks worldwide. And more about it, I'll let them take over and take you through that, through their presentation.
Everybody, first of all, thank you to the great work of Godrej Good Green team and for providing the World Resources Institute the opportunity to present today. It's been an honor attending this conference and presenting along with the leaders and visionaries, providing solutions to India's water challenges. So it's an honor to be here. And also, thank you for staying for the last presentation. It's tough to be the second to last presentation, but it's even tougher to be the last presentation. So I thank you for staying, and it speaks to your dedication to the water space, and we need more of you to work in this space and solve water challenges together. So I'm going to go through this presentation with my colleague, Charles Iceland. I'll go through the first part of the presentation, giving an overview of the Aqueduct project, and then Charles Iceland will take you through how the tool is used and how it can potentially be used as well. So first of all, I just wanted to say that we were focused on the ground actions and solutions, and we were looking at the big picture from the last presentation, but this is even bigger picture, and so this is very macro level, looking at global challenges and trends. So what is Aqueduct? I wanted to explain what water risks were and our motivation behind developing this tool, but Suresh did a really great job going through how we think about water risks and also the financial challenges and other impacts to industries and major water users. And so I won't go through how we talk about water risks, but I will describe our tool in detail. So this is Aqueduct. It is a global water risk mapping tool that allows companies, investors, and governments to quickly and comprehensively identify where and how complex water risks could affect their operations around the world. The value add of our project, we believe, is that it is high resolution, it's up to date, and user-friendly. For our maps, we have mapped about 15,000 catchments around the world, and we have water data for each of those catchments. We use the most comprehensive water withdrawal data and up to date for the world. There are a lot of data gaps, but we've tried to identify the best available that's out there globally. And then keeping with WRI's open data and transparency values, our methodology, maps, and GIS shapefiles are all publicly available and free to all users. Our maps are on an easy-to-use, user-friendly platform where users can easily upload up to 250 different locations at once and download the water results for each location. So I really encourage you to visit our website and our tool. The website is www.wri.org/aqueduct. We'd really appreciate your feedback, and we're also always looking to improve this valuable and user-friendly tool. So I wanted to quickly go through the partnership, because this project could not have been, or could not have succeeded without the partnership of our alliance of leading companies and foundations. Our founding partners were General Electric and Goldman Sachs. And since 2010, we've added an array of different partners to the Aqueduct Alliance who have helped make the project applicable to the private sector, but also, Charlie will also showcase later on how our project can be used by governments, NGOs, and civil society, which is also our focus. So this is the core of our project. We evaluate water risk by combining 12 different indicators of both water quantity, quality, regulatory, and reputational risk. Each map tells a small story and puts the complex story of water risk into a macro level map, providing geographic context to it. I'll go through some of these maps in detail shortly. But before I do that, I do want to touch on the data selection that we used. We completed extensive literature review and identified data sets that had global coverage and that were publicly available. And then we did a comparative analysis looking at whether the global data sets were granular, had historical data, and was up to date, and also whether it was from a reputable organization. Then we consulted with subject matter experts. We then peer-reviewed our framework and our indicators and our maps with 20-plus experts in business, governments, NGOs, and academia. Everything we do at WRI, we try to base it on robust analysis, building out the best available science. Even though it's really hard to find good global data sets, we believe we've identified the best that is out there. Due to limited time, I'll only highlight a few of our indicators and our maps, and we'll be happy to go through them in more detail with you afterwards with those who are interested. But this is our baseline water stress map. This is the way we calculate this map is total withdrawal over total available supply. And total withdrawal, we're looking at municipal water use, industrial water use, and agricultural water use. High stress areas here is where it's in red, and it's also where there's huge water demand pressures from industry, agriculture, and domestic. And there will be potentially competition between major water users in these red areas. This is another map called flood occurrence. It's the number of floods that's been recorded for the last 20 years. It's a data set that we used and pulled from the Dharma Flood Observatory. And red areas or high-risk areas are where there's more than 10 floods that's occurred in the last 20 years. And so high number of floods can occur for many reasons, including hurricanes, typhoons, and there are definitely flood-prone rivers such as the Mississippi in the United States and the Brahmaputra as well. Here's another map. Drought severity, something we've heard of many times today. This drought severity map is looking at both the length of the drought and number of months, but also the severity of the drought for the last 100 years. And so this drought measurement is really looking at low soil moisture, and these will have great impacts on agricultural water users. And finally, this is a global groundwater stress map. The way we define groundwater stress here is the ratio of groundwater withdrawal relative to recharge rate. Values above 1 here indicate where there's unsustainable groundwater consumption that could affect groundwater availability and groundwater-dependent ecosystems. And many of the solutions that were talked about today would apply to these high groundwater stress areas. This map was published by McGill University, and it's published from Nature that was publicly available recently, and so we decided that we needed a groundwater indicator, so we included that into our risk framework. So all of these, the 12 different indicators, we have information for the different catchments globally, so we stack them on top of each other to produce one overall water risk map. We realize that not all indicators are created equal. Different users, different types of businesses will prioritize different water challenges and water information differently. So we offer a preset set of 10 weights for 10 key industry sectors. but allow individual users to change the weights for each indicator to reflect how important it is to them. So without further ado, I'll let Charlie go through how our information has been used and can potentially be used.
Okay, thank you very much, Tien. So the question is, how can this powerful tool be used? And so the private sector can use it in various ways. The person, for example, at Procter & Gamble, who sits in the corporate headquarters and is responsible for managing water-related risks to Procter & Gamble's 200 or so facilities around the world, might ask him or herself, what are the 10 or 20% of my facilities that are most at risk, and what types of risk will these facilities likely face? By plotting their locations on our maps, they can quickly do a simple screening to figure out what are the likely candidates for high risk, and therefore who should they spend time and money on to further investigate the risk and develop risk mitigation strategies. Other companies have relatively little water use in their facilities, such as McDonald's, but they have a lot of embedded water in their supply chain. McDonald's, for example, procures beef and pork and poultry and bread. These are all inputs that require a lot of water and therefore have a lot of water-related risk. McDonald's, therefore, last year began asking 350 of its top supplier facilities to use Aqueduct to map and report their water risk back to McDonald's headquarters. If you think corporate risk is mundane and not important enough, then there are issues of much greater importance that these maps can help you analyze. One of these issues of critical importance, and we're seeing it more and more daily, is the challenge across the world to food security. And what we've done here is we've superimposed the locations of irrigated agriculture in the United States on top of our water risk maps. The locations that have color are those areas that are irrigated. The areas that are grayed out don't have irrigation. And what you can see here is that there are a lot of locations both in central United States and in Southern California that are facing high risk. In fact, when we total up the total area in the United States that is currently at risk, we estimate that it's about 40% of our current irrigated agriculture. Furthermore, when we superimpose these same irrigated areas on maps we've developed that estimate long-term change in water risk, what we found is almost 3/4 of our irrigated areas would see their water stress grow 2 to 8 times worse in the 25 years between 2000 and 2025. And this signals a huge looming problem for the United States. And unfortunately, when we replicate these maps in other parts of the world, in Southern and Eastern Asia and Africa, on maps of the world as a whole, we find similar results, that about 3/4 of our irrigated areas are going to see a tremendous deterioration in their water risk profile. We can also use these maps to evaluate energy security. Here we've superimposed the locations of all thermal, hydro, and nuclear power plants on top of this portion of Southern and Eastern Asia. And what we find is nearly 20% of today's power plant design capacity in this area is located in areas of significant water stress concern. When we plot these same locations on top of our long-term change in water stress, what we find is over half of these plants will see their water stress grow 2 to 8 times worse in the 25-year period from 2000 to 2025. And these are just the plants that exist today. We've heard today that new power plants coming online, India, China, we'll probably see a doubling of these power plants between now and 2050. So it's not just the current assets, but all of the additional capacity that we're going to install in the next 40 or so years. These maps can also and have been used by U.S. intelligence services to try to figure out what are the likely implications for U.S. national security of increasing water risk around the world. They are interested in knowing where is conflict likely to occur between states, where is state stability likely to deteriorate due to water-related risk. They published a sanitized version of this report about a year ago. They asked for our permission to publish our maps. Of course, we gave that permission. This is a map that we currently have showing long-term change in water stress. We have 9 such maps online. But we've decided this year to revise these maps. So we'll have the latest data using the latest IPCC scenarios. So we'll have new maps for 2020, 2030, and 2040 available by the end of this year. Furthermore, we're in talks with NASA, our National Space Agency, to see about uploading real-time satellite remote sensing data that can show stream flow, flooding, drought conditions, food production estimates around the world in real time. They can also show such things as the levels of lakes and reservoirs. They can show whether groundwater is rising or declining. It's usually declining. And so finally, I'd like to say that we, maybe I meant me to end. Finally, we're developing additional indicators of water governance because, as many speakers here have noted, it's only the government who can enact laws, create the rules for the game that the various players have to adhere to. And so we want to rate the governance of different countries around the world so that we can hold governments around the world accountable for their management of water resources. Thank you very much.